Welcome to In Early, the crypto podcast, where I speak to those at the forefront of the digital asset space, telling real-life stories, discussing the growth and growing pains of the industry, and exploring how blockchain technology has made an impact on people's lives. My name is Matt Green, and I'm the blockchain litigation lead at Shoesmiths. This week I speak to Bijan Burnard, who is the CEO of Lattice Labs, a studio which assists in scaling those looking to enter the Web3 space. We speak about the Lattice Network, described as a network as a service and what that means, as well as its proof of vote consensus, which utilises artificial intelligence to ensure proactivity in running the protocol and a commitment to eco-focused blockchains. Bijan, how are you doing? Thanks for joining.
Hi, Matt. How are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. And you're in Monaco today?
I am.
Is that where you live?
I do. I'm between here and London.
Okay, very nice. I think let's just get straight into it. And it's a question that I ask most people at the start of these podcasts. And it's about how they got into the blockchain and Web3 space. I'd like to know a little bit about your story. So what were your previous roles? I know that you were a technology specialist in Dubai. Tell me a little bit about that and what you did.
So basically I started in working as technology specialist in the defense sector over 5 years ago. We were researching and developing different data structures for the Qatari and the UAE government to implement. And I started with the block lattice data structure, and thoroughly with my team, I understood it very well. And I thought we could encrypt this and use it for civilian blockchain, as it uses functionality and interoperability of all networks. It has that function. Allowing also this cross-chain compatibility with smart contracts and data usage. So we really thought it would implement and change the way all networks talk to each other and communicate.
So when you were doing that job previously, you were doing blockchain, you were working with blockchain technology even back then?
Yes, stumbling in and out of it. More data structures, but we were obviously researching a lot about blockchain. And in the defense sector, it's required high procedures and protocols for implementation of different sort of applications. So blockchain was definitely something that was very interesting for the sector.
So would it be fair to say that you were the tech guy, you were the brains, the maths, whatever it may be?
I was one of them. I was one of them.
Was there a lot of them?
There was a few, yes, there was a few. But great team, great people, great experience, and it's brought me to where I'm today.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's move on into your venture into Web3 blockchain and itself, Lattice Labs. It may well be useful to go through what your definition of Web3 is, and then tell us what Lattice Labs does. And to my mind, it's about scaling Web3. But maybe if you start with what Web3 is, and then we'll talk about Lattice Labs.
All right. So, Web3, as you know, it's the next evolution of the internet and the web. And it's, as you know, it allows the users to seamlessly take their data across the web, right? The Web3 concept, though, has been out there in existence for the last 20 years, but there hasn't been such a demand for web companies until this recent year to collaborate their data structures using tools and services now that's been developed. So it's growing, it's scaling every day. It's about collaborating, basically different data sites on the web, and allowing the users to have this seamless journey where they can, they don't need to sign in various sites. They can take not just their data or sign in credentials, but actual assets across site to site.
Yeah, I think that sort of marries up with my understanding of Web3, which is fundamentally that users own the data that they have, or the creative output, whether it's music or film or as you say, simply data, that they actually own it. It's not put on a cloud service like Web2, and that they can use those data objects across different platforms.
Well, the independent sites, you'll still have some sort of interaction with cloud support and cloud storage units, but you do essentially, yes, you have this cold data that you do take from site to site, which is your main access points, your verifiable credentials, what you your digital assets, some tokens, essentially, payment methods that don't need to be secured on those clouds, but you hold them, and you decide where you want to use them on what site.
So it provides users with more autonomy over their digital assets and how they use them.
And this interoperability of not entering your card number 20 times a day.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a very personal story, which we might have to come on to another day. But it'll be useful to understand in a nutshell what Lattice Labs does then and how it interacts with Web3.
So Lattice Labs, I set up now over a year and a half ago. It's a development studio, development laboratory for blockchain and Web3. We do focus a lot on research and development and education, a lot of education. Same time, as we put out this education, and we advise these mainstream brands, not startups, but main brands about blockchain and how they can transition what their current products and services that they provide or offer today into the space and tokenize them, and then also create develop for them, advise and develop how to create a ecosystem that harnesses, embrace all of that and offers that to their customers.
Is it then a matter whereby you provide essentially Web3 services, the integration, the platforms, as you say, tokenization, to whoever wants it? You provide the tech, is that right?
We do. We provide the know-how and the input of the tech. The tech always varies from company to company. We develop for them, custom tailored way, method that they obviously see eye to eye, that fits the brand or fits the sporting team or fits the way they operate. So yes.
And then I suppose you've to some extent answered this, but what's what's Lattice Labs' mission?
Really to educate at the moment. There's really this very bad look and image about the space due to cryptocurrencies and so on. And I want to stay away from that. And I want to really, no one really educates properly what is blockchain and how it works in daily different issues independently as a user and for the brands. So we simplify the whole procedure and the process, and we advise them on how we look at case studies, basically the sporting team, what they have as assets today, and where's their points of revenue, and how to really implement that into an ecosystem with utility using tokenized products and services that they can then offer.
It's interesting, Ryan. I guess we'll come on to the education points later, but from my experience, you go onto Google, you type in what is blockchain or what is a token or what's proof of work, and you do get some websites that are quite good. I know certain exchanges provide information, but it is relatively limited, and sometimes the target of those websites is a little bit muddled. Is it supposed to be for individuals who understand this space or people who aren't necessarily familiar with it? So I understand that there may well be a space in the market for real education at different levels. But I want to dig into Lattice Labs a little bit more. You called it a studio, blockchain studio. What does that mean?
Well, we have it's made up of a team made up of various developing experts, blockchain experts, data scientists, and we all come together with all different experiences, problems, and we link the technologies together and see how we can develop the different processes for daily solutions. And we implement it, first advise the companies on how to do so and educate them on what those processes are. And then we try to implement. As there's no one else do advising in that level, then they do request us to develop the projects.
So it's sort of a consultancy, but I guess maybe the word studio is used to cover the fact that there are different kinds of practices and professionalisms that when put together feed into something that is more unique. It's more encompassing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then again, also we developed our layer one. So Lattice Labs built this layer one we'll get into. And then the various Web3 products. So we have a Lattice backpack, which is essentially your data backpack that you take across the web. Holding.
Okay. That's a nice analogy. Yeah, I might use that in the future if you don't mind, as an analogy for how Web3 works, because essentially it does give you the ability to portal your data, because you essentially hold it, use it, and you're able to use it across different spaces. I had a look at your white paper, and when I say your white paper, it's the one that I'm going to include in this podcast, in the extra sort of reading around it. It notes that you empower Web3 enabled businesses by creating digital assets, tokenizing real and digital assets, assist with supply chain management and institutional finance, assist with healthcare, artificial intelligence, and central bank solutions, just to name a few. So is Lattice then fundamental proprietary technology, and is it designed to sit behind a variety of different industries?
Yes. Well, Lattice Labs is not. Lattice Network, the developed the framework, is definitely. It's very different to any other, has a different consensus to any other chain out there or network. It's definitely the first network of networks that allows this interoperability of digital assets. And this is allowing communication between multiple ecosystems, which will be then used now in the future, hope to see soon, very cool metaverses.
So it's the ability for different platforms, different Web3 spaces, whatever they may be, to interact with each other, no matter whether there's 2, 3, or millions. You're almost like a bridge between them.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. Our consensus mechanism is what really stands out and makes it all happen. Okay,
and I think we're going to come on to some of the more detail in the wording of your white paper shortly. But just looking at the network, so the Lattice Network, you describe in your white paper as a network as a service. What does that mean?
So it's the first non-profit network as a service. It is there for building and implementation of all these Web3 products that we hope to see soon. So it's open source. It allows everyone to build on it and have the same features from one to another. Nobody has less than another. We have a lot of tools also that help the development of those platforms. If so, gives the means to companies to build themselves.
So it's an open source, not for profit. So is this, for you personally, is this a project? Is this a business?
Actually, it's a concept. It's a concept allowing business to grow, allowing business to take part on a fluent space, and allowing this non-competitive, communication between all sorts of technologies.
Okay, and I just want to dig into a little bit more about the Lattice Network, and just to sort of read from your website and the white paper. It says the Lattice Network is a scalable and eco-friendly layer 1 blockchain that achieves high throughput and offers compatibility with Ethereum and virtual machine and all other major blockchain networks. So I just want to break some of this down for people who may not be familiar with some of these terms. So you say it's scalable and eco-friendly. Let's take each of those points in turn. How is it scalable and how is the network eco-friendly?
Well, scalable in the sense that it has this interoperability, right? Which we'll go into when we go into the consensus. I'll explain a little bit more with understanding for the public. The eco-friendliness, it requires no mining at all. It has no mining. It has its consensus is a POV. So it's a voting arbitration of different necessary parties or nodes within our network and consortium of other networks that allow everything to work together.
So when you say eco-friendly and when you talk about mining, it's about not using more energy than necessary in order to create, or in order to mine, or in order to create tokens. I mean, how does it work?
Correct. So there's not the extensive computing power required for a certain other consensus, proof of work, proof of stake. It requires the speed. The speed is there allowing multiple transactions to occur with the same amount or the minuscule of computing power required for others. It has no requirement to have nodes or computers running to have the network. It can be offline. All computers can be offline and essentially still there as a data structure, sitting in the cloud. So either being people, or all the users being offline or online, data and the structure consists of the same principle.
So it doesn't matter whether computers are turned off or on. It doesn't matter whether humans exist or not, because the network remains, I suppose. It sits there whether people interact with it or not.
Yeah, it's very similar to your mobile phone. If you have your SIM card inside but your phone is off, you're not going to receive any calls, but the calls still do come.
Okay.
You still be left with a voice command.
Okay. No, that's a very smart way to put it, I suppose. So you can have it offline, but it still operates in that way. There is still something.
There's still data. Yes.
So what is one of the other phrases that we picked up and spoke about just before was layer 1 blockchain. What does layer 1 mean in this context?
So layer 1 means it has its own data structure. It does not use any other data sources. It creates its own framework. So the framework sits in its own bed. It requires no output. It's not a fork, essentially. So you have layer 2s and layer 3s that are forks of other blockchain or hybrids using the same protocols, but essentially changing the computing power or the amount of nodes that allow to validate at the same time.
So does layer 1 then mean it's sort of the first one of its kind? It hasn't been changed by any third party. And then I suppose layer 2, 3, etc. are possibly blockchains or technology that sit above that maybe amend the protocols, change it in some way, or build up upon it. So your data set is the first of its kind.
First of its kind of ours. There's other blockchains which are layer 1 as well. So it's just essentially it's our own framework.
And is that proprietary? Is that something that you guys have developed, or is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. It's developed. It's owned by the Lattice Network Foundation.
And just to pick up on some of the other phrases that we went through just before, it says it's compatible with Ethereum and virtual machine. Can you describe what that means? So
if we let's go into the consensus mechanisms, and then it will elaborate that. We all know this. Our first public application for blockchain technology is Bitcoin, which surfaced in 2008. BTC's secure hash algorithm, which uses proof of work. Proof of work is a consensus that's, the mechanism requires, its protocol requires nodes, aka miners, to spend all their computational power and electricity in order to generate the new block on the chain. But only after a certain amount of power used and worked with, the miners then can prove the smart contract is valid. Okay, these miners obviously they receive the transaction fees as a reward, essentially to use their computational power, and that's what the mining is all about. And then you have obviously proof of stake, which other types of consensus is another type of consensus mechanism. It's used to validate smart contracts as well. It's used by Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, Polkadot. This mechanism is a protocol that decides the nodes, aka users, with a substantial amount of tokens to then become validators by staking a substantial amount of token on that network, and the chain chooses them as delegates them as a validator to add the new blocks on chain. And these validators, they also are rewarded transaction fees for initially staking that money to validate, staking those tokens to validate the blocks, the new blocks on chain.
When you say staking, for those who may not understand, what does that mean? Because it isn't necessarily too different potentially from putting your money up for gambling and sort of saying that here's some money I'm willing to risk. So can you just go through, before you talk about the next type of consensus with proof of vote, just tell us what staking is.
So proof of stake is basically the users with a substantial amount of token, they put up a collateral, like initial funding for the gas fees and the transaction or a contract to be written in the new block. And depending on how much collateral these nodes or users put up, they get chosen to validate that transaction and get that reward at the end. So they're rewarded for that initial collateral. So their interest back on their initial collateral put.
So they're rewarded for taking that risk by putting that collateral up.
Correct.
So then the next sort of layer of this, or the next step, is what Lattice Networks is run by, which is proof of vote consensus. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So proof of vote, very new, very cool. It's a high performance consensus, obviously, based on a vote mechanism used by a consortium of interoperable layer 1 blockchain, Lattice Network. The POV is also another consensus mechanism. The protocols coordinates and distributed nodes, aka users, of significant authority, controlled by all chains, as Lattice Network is a network of chains. Integrated nodes of other chains are consist inside Lattice Network. Then obviously the integration of these significant authorities, they vote on chain to decentralize the arbitration of the end result of the block. So basically, the consortium of chains integrated to the Lattice Network will become a decentralized arbitration by voting.
So can you allow third parties to vote on your behalf? Is it sort of is it almost like having votes in a company where you can send them to third parties? How does it work in that respect?
Well, the key of the voting is to establish different security identities for chain participants, so that the submission and verification of the blocks are decided by the consortium partners. Voting is like a league of different networks, such as Ethereum, right? Ethereum assets are able to use on the Lattice Network. So a validator, which is a node of Ethereum that is rewarded in a proof of stake, that is a very significant authority in that Ethereum transaction. So amongst that within that Ethereum transaction, that specialized party that's on Lattice Network will be chosen to vote on behalf of that transaction. If it is a Bitcoin or another consortium's method, then a miner would be involved in the voting practice.
Okay, so let's sort of take it back to the question which we sort of hopped over, which was the word in which you said it was compatible with Ethereum virtual machine. Now that we've gone through the proof of vote consensus, how does that then link back to what we were talking about?
So, as it's a network of networks, it's EVM compatible. So EVM is the most built on today chain with multi dApps, Web3 products. We allow all assets from not just EVM compatible blockchains, but all assets from other blockchains within the Lattice Network. Right? So anybody that is on Ethereum and wants to hold their digital assets now in a chain where it's compatible with others, they can take their assets from Ethereum metaverse and bring it to Lattice Network, and then all the platforms that are running on Lattice Network will have access to Ethereum products, assets, Polkadot assets, BTC assets, and so on.
So all you have to do is prove that you have voting rights elsewhere, or that you have assets elsewhere, and that gives you rights across different chains. Is that the point? It gives the accessibility to hold one kind of asset and yet to contribute to a completely different asset or blockchain.
Correct. Absolutely. In the proof of stake mechanism consensus, it requires a specialized authorities, which are the validators. That specialized authorities are the same consistent authorities that will be used in an Ether asset transaction on the Lattice network. Now, we also developed the AI part. So essentially, instead of waiting for these specialized parties to put up this collateral for the voting process of an Ethereum asset, of their staking process, the AI analyzes the blocks before and can really determine who are those specialized parties that are going to take part in the new creation of the blocks before they do so.
So the role of the AI is to determine what assets people have and the operability of how those assets could be used. Is that right? It's sort of proactive to determine what assets people have.
Yes, and based on those holders, those users, what's their past history in staking, computational power, interaction with different platforms. So the AI implements a different overlook, allowing to predetermine what and who is best fit to create the new blocks.
So what would stop the AI essentially choosing the same parties over and over again? Because I appreciate that there's a difference between machine learning and AI, right? And if it's sort of based on a machine learning style, then it will look at what has happened in the past to consider how to act in the future. So if it determines that a particular party is best suited, given the fact that it's being proactive, surely that would enable the same parties to be preferenced in the future again. Or has the AI been designed to ensure that there is a slightly more democratic or variability in who's chosen?
No, so it all depends on the consortiums or the networks, part of the consortium of blockchains within Lattice Network. Again, we can't control or determine what wallets will act on today or tomorrow, but based on track record and based on constant interaction with the network, there is a really precise determination, allowing who sees fit at that day. There's millions connected to each of the networks, so
yeah,
and there's millions of transactions happening per second. So it's not possible for to consistently choose the same validator, but it does happen. Of course, it does happen. For those, for example, that are part of staking pools, with large amounts of staking collateral, they likely get chosen, especially if their signers signed together with certain exchanges and so on.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because if there's a certain staking pool which has a certain strategy that the AI prefers, then it may well be that they keep getting chosen. But I guess it may well be that because so many people are interacting, there may be, depending on the depending on the way that people want to transact, that they are looking for a different kind of history, a different kind of ability to trade, and a different kind of balance, potentially.
There's always the opportunity for any new validator to really be part of the blocks. There's no one stopping that. There's access to everyone, and hopefully more and more as we bring and hope and educate more people into the space.
So I guess to some extent we've covered this, because my next question was going to be, why is it designed to be proof of vote, and why is that better? But I think, and hopefully you can add to this, to my mind, from what you've said, it appears as though the proof of vote gives access for people to interact with different asset classes despite owning others. Is that right?
Correct. In a way, absolutely. But also it requires no, it allows the voting process is an arbitration of multiple assets. So this interoperability, that is required for the interoperability. So if you, Matt, want to, you want to send a digital asset from Ethereum to on your Lattice through your Lattice Network backpack to another user using Lattice Network, it allows that user to receive that asset regardless of him holding different assets from other chains, and the voting process allows us to really connect to the nodes Ethereum holds, get that specialized validator, and to validate that transaction much quicker than Ethereum does themselves.
Right. Okay. So it's all about speed to some extent as well.
Speed, and so we can move on to the next block, basically.
So I was reviewing your white paper, and one of the things that I noticed was there are some mentions of specific mathematical points which are far beyond me and sort of fall more into your realm. There was one that I wanted to pick out just so I could understand what it was all about. So what is 5-lemma? What role does it play in the Lattice network? And can we sort of break it down for more simple people like me?
Yeah, of course, Matt. So the blockchain 5-lemma is our Lattice Network's compass for the future of distributed ledger technologies overall, which is a balance between speed, security, scalability, computational effectiveness, and being eco-friendly. And it's a bit of an improvement from Ethereum's founder Vitalik Buterin's quadrilemma, which he came out with. Comparing 5-lemma to other blockchain operational protocols, it's required to optimize all 5 pillars of those 5 things I just mentioned for the future of blockchain. Unlike other chains, consensuses, where it's not possible to optimize all 5 of those features without, certain trade-offs of one of them or 2 of them. For example, distributed ledgers such as Bitcoin, SHA, has arguably strong a protocol for decentralization and security, but gives up speed and scalability, and a result of being really eco-unfriendly. So there's never been all at once, and we believe at Lattice Labs, Lattice Network, that all 5 of those requirements, features, are the backbone for a successful blockchain going forward.
So it's a matter of understanding what's important to each project. So as you say, Bitcoin was about security, but it may be a bit slower. And then the Ethereum network may have different priorities. You've identified 5 of those, and those are the features that underline exactly what Lattice Network is about.
Absolutely, Matt. Absolutely. It achieves Lattice Network decentralization, security through chosen permission factors, a next generation consensus protocols. Anyone can join and leave the network at any time, and all nodes are always intact and equal, which is the most important for us to run really scale operation for the brands and companies that are going to be using this interoperable framework.
So when I typed into Google yesterday 5-lemma and I saw lots of mathematical things, actually I was mistaken. 5-lemma is about principles rather than about hard maths. Is that right? So I've got that wrong from my Google search.
Perfect. Just simple principles that make it really work and make it successful in the long term.
And could you just state what they are again, just for clarity?
Of course. Scalability, speed, security, computational effectiveness, and being eco-friendly.
The eco-friendly thing is I think one of the key issues in dealing with networks going forward. I'm not necessarily sure how Bitcoin is going to sort of come out of what it does in a different way to appear more eco-friendly. I know that there's different operations to use, sort of biofuels to fuel computers, etc. But to your mind, is eco-friendly, is that the main focus, or are each of those 5 things equally important?
They're equally important. Scalability is important, being able to develop and being open, a network as a service. That's definitely very key for the communities and brands. The speed obviously is super important, as we can validate blocks and get onto the next block. That helps the scalability work, and we have that fluency. Then obviously the security is required. The security that all this malicious acts are used. That's how our voting process really determines and removes those malicious acts on the network of people validating or lending collateral to nodes to become those validators. So we really thought of every issue that the current chains and networks are having today, and not kicking them out, but creating a framework that allows the usage of those digital assets from those chains, but in a safer, faster, quicker environment.
No, that seems to make a lot of sense. And if they're treated equally, then it will probably have certainly a wide application.
Sure.
I want to move on to the Lattice token. Usually when projects like this come around, there is a specific token with governance rights, and it has a market value and is traded. So looking at the Lattice token, is it in circulation? What rights does it hold? Is it listed anywhere? What's its value? What's its purpose? Just want to get an understanding of what the Lattice token's about.
So as just Lattice Network, it's at the moment it's in testnet, and we only developing for developing, and the network's only being used by partners and brands at the moment in beta stages as we develop and get them running. So the LAT token is basically, it is the native token that we essentially will use in the future as a payment system for verifying those blocks for other networks as the consortium communicate together. It does not achieve any volatile value like other native coins, as its value just increases and decreases subtly as the network has the usage of the network grows and increases on a daily basis, which is normal. Maybe on a Saturday there will be more fluency at the moment. In the future, as we hope to have multiple brands that have already a large following, that gonna big teams that have a low sports teams, for example, that have fans no matter what day of the week it is accessing their services, then the network usage is very high. The value would increase, but would not. It's not a volatile increasing or decreasing effect. It is a scaling as people are using the network in a seamless way.
So the token is designed to be held at a value of the network and of your project rather than a market value of trading. That's the point. So the more interactions people have with the network, the idea is that value of the token will go up. It's not about it's not about necessarily how often it's being traded in the open market.
No, not at all. It will not be listed as well. It will not be listed on any market or any exchange. It's only solely purpose as an internal method payment system for verifying the blocks. As the people verify the blocks, more interaction with the network, there'll be more blocks to be required to be verified. And that's, in that sense, there will be more tokens. The value of the token will increase depending on the usage.
So who is supposed to be owning or holding these tokens?
So the network as the community holds the nodes hold the tokens, and it can be purchased or used as a payment method once validated. It can also be a payment medium between two tokens on the platform, or a interoperability between two platforms on the platform. Essentially, you might not hold a Lattice token, but you hold a wrapped version, meaning a branded version of that token for a partner or a client, that a brand that builds and uses their token on their platform.
Is it a bit in that sense then? Just from my mind, it sounds a little bit like what Socios were doing, whereby they were creating a token for specific football clubs, and then that was their sort of fan token. Is that how you see it, or is it different from that?
A bit different. A bit different. We believe that every brand, regardless of being sport or retail, they have their own name and their own branding and their own ecosystem. We believe that those ecosystems should always stay apart because they're all unique to themselves. LVMH has started in the last 2 years dabbling into having their own blockchain, their own hybrid chain. But this chain, the token, Orium token, is used across their brands. And, every brand is unique to themselves and has a different following. So we believe that each ecosystem should have its own token, a token that is not speculative, not on the market. Primary, similar factor like the LAT that's on the Lattice Network, and it stays and it's purchased only with fiat within their ecosystems.
Okay.
And once the token is used to purchase digital assets, and the interoperability of these digital assets that's what we're looking for. That's where we want to see the future. We want to see someone use an asset from one brand and take it into a metaverse of another, and hold it, take it with you in your backpack, and just change your shirt when you want to on your avatar. Not required to be that shirt from the same ecosystem, if you may.
So the backpack's actually, again, building as a good metaphor. I want to talk the sort of last bit of this podcast. I want to talk a little bit about education, which is to some extent where we started. I understand a large part of what you do is education and making sure that the public are aware of use cases for blockchain. So could you describe some of the use cases for blockchain that people might not necessarily know?
Well, daily life. I mean, we every day we're ordering food, we're eating, we're sleeping, we're using apps on the phone, data usage. People also want to know more about data about their bodies and about the foods they eat and what they're buying. You have a lot of AI applications that are reading this data and telling the users what they should be buying, what they should be eating, and so on. So blockchain, definitely being able to tokenize every frame of that data instead of just creating that data and allowing companies to hold it and use it for other products and selling to other companies. But to tokenize the supply chain from when you put on your shoes in the morning, which are also tokenized, to opening your fridge and grabbing a bottle of water, which is tokenized, because from the source, the amount of liters that have been bottled for that specific bottle is tokenized, and we can follow the chain until you drink it, and then apply that to the data, your health data, from ordering things online and understanding the times and delays and why it says it's stuck at Heathrow or stuck there, or there should be reasons for all delays, and those delays and problems can be also tokenized based on physical attributes that are valid, and maybe a plane is delayed or there's a strike or so on. So a lot of attributes to daily life can be tokenized, and really allows this understanding is seamless of how the world works on a daily basis. And it's just really giving a value to every data structure or a data point that is, or understanding of mechanisms in daily life as well.
Is it a different way then to interact with data or data sets to ensure that there is an immutable understanding of maybe where products come from? So you referenced food. I know that certain companies use blockchain to understand supply chains, so you understand exactly where items have come from and their provenance, as well as transport and the movement of goods, whereby blockchains are used to deal with the movement of those goods across the world, so that those data sets can be understood more efficiently. Is that the sort of idea that you have?
Yes, absolutely. And then specifically the actual items that are being moved. So from the healthcare system, vaccines, medical supplies, which are multiples from physical to liquids to so on, and where they're manufactured and how they're put in different place vials and transportation species, and who has bottled this, who has packaged this, and their costings, those people, everybody in the supply chain, what it costs for those 3 employees that day, on that day, to come in to work and pay for the travel to get to work and to bottle that. And it's about really understanding deep, which the AI is now learning every day, to provide the simplified data out of it for us to, the average person to understand, but really keeps track and gives a value to everyone and every action on our planet today. And this is a future that I would love to live in,
where provenance is perfect and where you understand where everything is at any one time. That has lots of good connotations and bad, I guess. I just have one last question for you, which is about more about education. And it's about, how are you looking to educate people and get your message across? I understand you've done a children's book. I mean, is that one example?
Yeah, so Lattice Labs, we've written a series of children's books for adults to teach our younger ones, as this technology is growing every day, in a simplified and very child-friendly way, just educating children with narrative, fictional characters, but using non-fictional information. Also, we provide for free 4 times a week on every platform educational videos for different things that we've talked about today, and different segments of the technology, and some news of how countries are integrating and big companies are integrating blockchain solutions. And we also put together courses that are sold on our Lattice shop, which we have merchandise and courses that you can pay and have quizzes at the end of, and get a certification on your expertise in blockchain, and many other features. And I try to help schools, talks in local schools and local universities and online, and talking with you, and trying to get the word out, and trying to really simplify the understanding, and really get people away from being scared and understanding that it's actually a positive solution.
So it's about building confidence, it's about marketing, and I guess what sits above that is education.
Correct.
Thank you, Bijan. Really appreciate the time. Thank you very much for coming in today. Very educational, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Matt. Lovely seeing you again, and speaking to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you. This podcast does not contain any financial or legal advice, and you should not seek to rely on it as such. Opinions are the individual's own. This podcast was produced and edited by Joe Hawkins and music by Luke Carey. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.